Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and from which to the intelligence committees. I actually had people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Soul Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Miles Lewis. It is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. Yes, indeed, we survived another election. So far, so good, or not, depending upon your perspective. Congratulations, condolences, or whatever, wherever you may fall on the spectrum. Let's all continue to be friends. I know so many friendships, family relationships have been torn asunder over the last many years, and that's not good, folks. But I know we all have strong opinions about everything, like Bigfoot or UFOs. Or UAP? No. Flying saucers, UFOs. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. You can play the home game and follow along at flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives. Find thousands of links to all the news articles that we are going to cover tonight. Not thousands tonight. I'm going to try to keep it short. It is... we are just, I guess, a week away from the next UFO UAP hearing on Capitol Hill, so that should be interesting. We'll see if there's any real developments there. I doubt it, but you know me, I'm a little skeptical of the current wave of quote-unquote capital D disclosure. Well, hey, here are some of the links over at the Flipboard, and starting from a little ways down in the scroll, and keeping to the cryptozoology Bigfoot arena. This past week, I listened to Chester Moore's conversation with Lyle Blackburn, two of our several Texas-based cryptid investigators. They were talking about the Lake Worth monster, which is celebrating an anniversary, and of course, Lyle Blackburn has published a new book on the subject that I believe uncovers some new information that should be of note and interest to those cryptozoologically inclined. John Greenwald Jr. over at the Black Vault, continuing to FOIA away. And as he and others pointed out last week that we reported on, Lou Elizondo is still making his book tour. He is apparently possibly going to be at the upcoming UFO UAP hearing, but he's still catching a lot of flack for having shown and endorsed this photo you see here under the headline or hovering above the headline, Pentagon chief reveals photo of large UFO quote unquote mothership near U.S. embassy. This particular article at the Daily Mail does chronicle John Greenwald Jr. and others sleuthing about the most likely explanation for this probable, I forget the name of the effect, but it's the same thing that they use at one of the best rides at Walt Disney World, Walt Disneyland, and that being the haunted house, haunted mansion, where you see the dancers, the ghosts, the ethereal-looking specters flying around, and it's just an old conjurer's trick involving reflections and glass. And basically the idea here is that we're seeing a light source on a ceiling, some kind of chandelier, and the hair obscuring the lower part of it of the person whose head took the picture. Now, is this 100% certain? No, much isn't in this world, but it seems quite highly likely and probable that that is the best explanation. And as others have said, it kind of begs the question. Here we have this alleged director of a supposed government UFO investigatory project who self-professed took this image from a fellow government employee who said it was authentic, and he passed it off without seemingly doing anything to confirm it. Now, again, who knows the circumstances, but it really just does not sit well with me and many others. But Lou Elizondo, good luck, Godspeed, and hope to see you at the hearings. Meanwhile, some other headlines: scientists concerned that mankind could fall into chaos after discovering alien signals. Now, this is over at digitamed.com. And this is, of course, a recurring theme going back to, I forget if it was the 60s or the 70s, but the famous, I believe, RAND study where they made basically the same claim that religious institutions, financial institutions, civilization would crumble in chaos as at the revelation of the detection of a true alien extraterrestrial force. Who knows? We'll be also talking about archives and libraries in a bit, but this article over at dnyuz.com, librarians face a crisis of violence and abuse. Actually, this is reproduced from the New York Times. No surprise there. We've all seen the rampant calls for not just book bannings, but I'm sure burnings will be next. But beyond that, it also just is the real... You have no idea the stories that librarians can tell you about the crazy stuff they have witnessed. In my brief working at the Austin Public Library, all sorts of things happened, from peeping toms to bum fights to just all kinds of terrible things at the library, none of which should dissuade anybody from using the public library system. But it just goes to show that these are frontline workers dealing with the public and all of its warts and all. Well, last week we reported on the recent publicity that archives such as David Marler, I keep calling David Doctor. David Marler, who I believe actually is an EMT, so maybe he is a doctor, I don't know. But his National UFO Historic Records Center in UFO HRC in Rio Rancho, Albuquerque, New Mexico, they got some press, as did Rice University's Jeff Kripal's Archives of the Impossible there in Houston, talking about their 10-year anniversary. And of course, we reported on how that actually, yes, the history of its formation goes back to about 2014 with Jacques Vallée giving his collections. But what I did not see last week is was a video produced by another local news agency there. And it's a nice video. I highly recommend you go check it out. Rice University celebrates 10 years exploring supernatural encounters, and it shows Jeff showing the investigative journalist, local anchor person, some of the records that they have in the collection, and focusing on some of the letters from the Strieber communion letters, and talking about, again, Jacques Vallée. Meanwhile, some other articles and videos from local news sources. Good friend Michael Hughes in Baltimore has talked to the local news there about Baltimore's Witchboard Museum, which chronicles the history of the enigmatic Ouija board. And I did not realize so much of the history of the spirit board, Ouija board, is from that region. That was very interesting to me. And Michael, we're hoping, will be giving a presentation for our monthly Anomaly Academy Cadet patrons very soon. Not sure what the subject matter will be, but it will definitely be interesting. Some of the other things. Oh, yes, we've got this big event coming up this Saturday, November 9th. It is the 364 UnHalloweens, aka the UnHalloween celebration that is being organized by our good friend Wizard Saul Ravencraft, and is going to be held at the new Nature's Treasures event center that is north of their current location, their longtime location. Of course, they're being forced out of their central Austin location due to the big I-35 expansion renovation project that is displacing so many businesses and people, to much mixed feelings here in Austin, Texas. But thankfully, Nature's Treasures is in good shape to move to a new location, and it actually, so far from the outside, what I've seen looks fantastic, and our friends, board members, and volunteers who have visited have said good things about it, and we're happy to be tabling there. So if you want to see the Anomaly Archives, some of its materials, you can visit us and a number of other wonderful vendors there at Nature's Treasures up in North Austin this Saturday from noon to 5 p.m. And you can find out more about that at 364unhalloweens.com, or I'll provide the link to our anomalyarchives.org page for that. Professor Simon Holland, who we've been reporting on getting a lot of press for his reportage on what appears to be ever closer declaration from the powers that be that, lo and behold, we may have finally found an alien civilization signal or evidence of some kind of alien presence way out there. And he's been getting some publicity on these claims as he's been talking to people doing this research, whether it be the search through luminous phenomenon, trying to detect visual imagery of alien civilizations, or actually trying to find the electromagnetic signals or some kind of actual communications. He is right on top of that. And he, in this latest video, ET Signal, Don't Tell the People, basically outlines what many of us have known or suspected, which is since about, I think, 1996, there have been protocols in place that basically are like, well, we've got to really vet this, and we can't just jump the gun and tell everybody right off the bat. And obviously that's going to anger some people, while others might understand the rationale for not creating chaos like that other article and the previous RAND study and other studies have suggested will happen if and when this discovery is finally made public. Meanwhile, there is now a video available of John Greenwald talking about that scandal or controversy, silly situation with Lou Elizondo and the mothership photo, where, of course, Greenwald is also talking about his other FOIA request efforts that have come to fruition lately. Here is, the awesome poster. Thank you, Victor, for designing this wonderful UnHalloween Celebration 2024 poster. You can click this link over at Anomaly Archives. Actually, I think I have that open right over here. Yeah, here's the full poster there. So have you ever experienced something strange? Join Anomaly Archives October 32nd. What? November 9th, noon to 5 p.m. at the UnHalloween Celebration. Meet vendors, witness a Victorian spirit session, hear panel discussions, take photo ops, dance, and there's a costume contest. And thanks to our volunteers, Victor and Anita XS, we're going to be offering stickers that represent the types of strange experiences that you might have had, whether they be UFO experiences, the third man, demons, the mystery hum, all kinds of things. Not everything is covered. There's just so much weirdness out there. We can't have a sticker for everything, but boy, there's quite a few stickers. And I can't wait to see the rolls of them. Anyway, folks you can go to 364unhalloweens.com and find out more about that. So, keeping with the alien signal, this space.com article, alien signal sent from Mars decoded by father-daughter. Apparently there was this contest whereby they were trying to see if people could detect and decipher, I believe, a quote-unquote alien signal, which was in fact a predesigned signal as part of this fun contest experiment, what have you. You can read about that at space.com. Of course, there's been more reporting on the controversies surrounding the Brooklyn Bridge abduction case, the Manhattan abduction case that has been made into a 3-part series that you can see on Netflix. Of course, I went over this last week or the week before, and I still really highly recommend this. And of course, there apparently is a lawsuit that was filed by the experiencer abductee Linda Napolitano before it aired, complaining that they either had violated the contract and or rewritten the contract. The one thing it says, I think, in the Forbes article is that the one thing that seemed significant was that she had been guaranteed that Carol Rainey, Bud Hopkins' ex-wife and arch skeptic and filmmaker whose footage and skepticism informed the other half of the balanced, in my opinion, believer debunker presentation. Linda Napolitano is claiming that the contract originally said that Carol Rainey was only supposed to have one interview. And it's certainly clear from the 3-part series that they shot her in different locations, and perhaps that was all in one day and they were calling it one interview. Who knows the details there, but I think Linda, who feels that she's being slandered and defamed and her reputation sullied, certainly that may be true, because there are folks like myself that think that is highly likely, though I'm still like so many of these subjects, I'm very agnostic about it. I lean towards Carol Rainey's interpretation, and I don't think it's an example of her being a quote-unquote alcoholic, bitter ex-wife who's out to slander her ex-husband's memory and legacy. I think she raises and has raised for a long time very legitimate grievances and not grievances, excuse me, points about Bud Hopkins, like so many abduction researchers, not being the best investigator. And despite, I think, some of the footage in the series where I think Bud talks about being an investigator, he may even say, I think I may have taken a note about this, so many abduction researchers, I say abduction researchers, but they often say that, well, they're not really investigating the case because they're not there to prove or disprove, they're there to help. Whereas there are some who are more like traditional ufologists, UFO researchers, who are trying to dig and validate through the traditional investigative methods. But as has always been the case, obviously it's very difficult to do so without offending the person being investigated or consoled. And this is certainly something I experienced as the leader, after it was founded by a different person, of a local abductee experiencer support group here in Austin, Texas. And I think that's the mark of the best seekers and investigators, is to be able to walk that line and try to still, be friends with the subjects and still be questioning of their stories. Again, jumping back to the astronomy and space exploration theme, this headline from space.com: Voyager 1 spacecraft phones home with transmitter that hasn't been used since 1981. Wow. that's awesome. That's amazing. Backup radio transmitter has remained dormant for about 43 years. That's just wild. So kudos to those engineers who built such good, long-lasting equipment. There's a lot of other good articles. There's another one. Excuse me. Does Bigfoot live outside of Houston? These people think so. That from Cron.com. That's the Houston Chronicle. That, of course, that footprint looks incredibly fake. That Bigfoot cast. But a lot of them look fake. But all right. And there's a nice video from the Alternate Realities conference that was just held in Memphis, where Steve Berg has conversations with folks there. So Carbondale, Pennsylvania. I am not familiar with this UFO case or crash case, but they too now have their own Carbondale Alien Festival. Carbondalian Festival. Let's see, where is that? Yeah. Is that over here? Yeah. Carbondale marks UFO crash next weekend. The festival highlighting a UFO crash in Carbondale takes off next weekend. One of the most interesting things about this for me was that they have a interactive, or rather immersive play or scene where people are treated as if they are press and shuttled to the crash site, where they then interact with, I believe they state that these are actual witnesses, or maybe they're just actors portraying the original witnesses, but they get to interact with them, or at least they immersively hear the stories of these witnesses. I think that's a very interesting approach to this that I've not really seen or heard of before. And I hope they videotape some of this and then post it online. I'd like to see more about that. Also, the Carbondalian word choice is kind of cute, and you can see these colorful, artistic alien cutouts in the background of the video, which apparently are being positioned around town. I assume commissioned by local artists, or adorned, maybe a standard form, adorned by different artists. Really reminds me of something that's become popular, I think, around the country, where whatever is the most iconic thing for a local area. In Austin, it's guitars that, for the live music capital of the world idea, can be sighted around downtown Austin, and each one is painted differently, adorned differently. I know I think maybe Dallas, I think they did the same thing with cows or steers. Anyway, I hear that this is a pretty common thing all around the country, probably all around the world. Also, the symbol for the Carbondalian Festival is rather cute. It's like a rip in space-time with a blue alien and a green alien who are very cute looking through. Also notice that alien in the background is decorated like a black and white cow. But you can't quite see it anymore in this image of it, but in the logo for the Carbondalian Festival, above and behind the aliens is a kind of a pyramid structure that features a flying saucer kind of creating the beams that are shooting out like the light below it in the shape of the pyramid, thereby having the UFO saucer as the top of the eye in the pyramid. Interesting, subtle stuff there, maybe not so subtle. Well, back over on our Flipboard, scrolling back through to the more recent sightings. Oh yeah, so there's now a new video from the Society for UAP Studies titled Phenomenology of the Phenomenon with Professor Jeffrey Kripal. I haven't had the chance to to watch that. It's over an hour presentation or discussion with Jeffrey Kripal. I'm sure that's worth your time. Over at enigmalabs.io, they've posted 25,000 sightings and counting. First data research and community platform dedicated to UAP. That's over at enigmalabs.io. And sad to learn this cryptozoological news. The beloved California Bigfoot Museum is going to close. I think it was just earlier this year. Our friends, our paramaniac friends, visited it and had pretty good things to say about it, I think. There's another article about this Bigfoot Discovery Museum set to close over at goodtimes.sc for, I believe, Santa Cruz. More reports on the Lou Elizondo mothership controversy, including videos that you can watch where he is showing this slide seemingly at the end of a presentation. I think he's going to be in Dallas-Fort Worth area in a matter of days or a week or two as part of this tour. Hopefully he's not showing that anymore, or if he is, that he's giving a little bit more background as to how he came to be promoting it, and then, of course, doing the obligatory explanation that it's been determined to not be authentic despite his original claims. Meanwhile, over at NBC4 Washington, Haunted Northern Virginia author explains one of the area's spookiest spots. That's Alex Matsuo, and always has interesting things to say. More astronomy news. Is there a hidden planet in our solar system? Astronomers say the moment of truth is near. This is from CNN. This, of course, reminds me so much of the arguments over Pluto being a planet or a moon, and various conspiracy theories about there being another planet out there and what might be on it. Our good friend Daniel Allen Jones, one of the most active para-UFO cryptid folks in Texas, was just interviewed last night on the UFO podcast, Podcast UFO by Martin Willis. Haven't had the chance to finish that video yet, but always enjoy what Daniel has to say. We've been wanting to get him on for a long time, and he's just constantly on the go. This guy is so hardworking. He's a drummer, he's a music teacher, but in his spare time, he is traveling around the state and in the neighboring states to every cryptozoology event, whether it's a Bigfoot marathon or a Sasquatch conference or UFO conferences down in the valley or paranormal conventions. He is almost always guaranteed to be there. And of course, I'll never forget when my first and only so far trip to Roswell, New Mexico in 2017. I'm in the Roswell Museum, and hey, there he is. And we took a selfie together. It was so nice to see him. Just one of the most wonderful, genuine fellows in the scene, and he's not like so many who are constantly arguing or criticizing or what have you. He's really a top-notch fellow. More news over at Time Magazine, time.com. Controversial story behind Netflix docuseries The Manhattan Alien Abduction, again about the Lyndon Napolitano case. Okay, guest blog over at badufos.blogspot. I did want to dive into this a little bit. Let's see here. Where is that? Yeah. Martin Kottmeyer's musings on Matthew Bowman's The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Now, I believe I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago finished reading The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, Alien Encounter, Civil Rights in the New Age in America by Matthew Bowman. Really good book. I really enjoyed it. It's not your traditional UFO or alien abduction book. It is more of a history book. It is more of a biography of the Hills, especially Betty Hill, but also Barney as well, that just gives you a much deeper sense of their lives, both before, during, and after their rise to fame in the UFO community. But he's juxtaposing it with this book that features Carl Flock, Peter Brooksmith, and himself, Martin Kottmeyer, and others, Encounters at Indian Head, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Abduction Revisited. That was an amazing book. I believe it's put out by anomalousbooks.com. I haven't read it in years, but I remember being very taken with it. Oh, and this person's blog. Is it Schaefer? Robert Schaefer. I believe he was also one of the members of the investigative team. So basically, if I'm remembering correctly, then rich guy, millionaire, I don't think he was a billionaire, but Joe Firmage. A lot of people don't really know or remember who Joe Firmage was, but in the 90s, he was a big deal. He was a very wealthy individual who had a UFO alien spiritual bedroom visitation experience that led him to really get invested in the UFO scene. And he funded a lot of projects, and he funded this, not quite a conference, but a confab, so to speak, whereby he had a number of, more skeptical researchers come together, including, I believe, Betty Hill, to reinvestigate the case and go back over the details of it. And I believe each researcher got their own chapter, if I'm remembering correctly. I need to go dig this book up and reread it. But I'd like to read quite a bit from this this article here by Martin Kottmeyer. Some critical and personal musings on Matthew Bowman's The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Bowman's new version of the Hill abduction is a mostly good book. He provides considerable amounts of new biographical background about their lives prior to the UFO event that made them celebrities in the UFO culture. He had access to the papers surrounding the investigation of the primary UFO event, and this adds many details and nuances to what was witnessed. We know from Bowman that Barney saw the UFO entities bathed in a, quote, shadowless blue light, a lovely evocative phrase that never made it into Interrupted Journey. He pays more attention than most to Betty's fears that they had been exposed to radioactivity from the craft, bringing information that 5 years after the event, she was writing scientists about her concerns that her recurrent bouts with pneumonia and how sick Delcy, their dog, was, and asking them about, quote, certain radiation dangers connected with UFO sightings, unquote. She also indicated that the initial call to Pease Air Force Base was prompted by wanting protection over what dangers they had been exposed to. He considerably fleshes out the story of Betty's later obsession with UFOs and how she claimed to have hundreds of sightings into the 1970s and beyond. Bowman indicates she also told ghost stories and embraced New Age beliefs, which he excuses as valid reactions to their rejection by establishment science and the authorities. All of this very accurate from what I got from the book. Strange to say, though, Bowman himself brackets the book with his own rejections. Quote, I do not believe the Hills were abducted. He is skeptical of the explanations given to the UFO event and, quote, the story of the abduction seems to me to lack proof beyond the Hills' own hypnotically recovered memories, a genre well known to be fraught and malleable. And a story of medical examination and interstellar travel seems too simple for the realities the Hills claimed to glimpse, unquote. That expression, realities, seems to carry a New Age meaning, and it is somewhat eye-opening that in the middle of the book, just before recounting the dreams that Betty wrote down in the days after a UFO sighting and her realization of possible radiation exposure, he describes them as, quote, a comprehensive narrative, far more logical than a dream. And I can only term that a disappointing development, for Betty's dreams very much seem like dreams to me, surreal and quite irrational. She is thrust in the navel with a large needle and experiences pain. Her examiner is surprised by this and is able to stop it simply by a wave of the hand. The leader gives Betty a book, but his crew points out that he shouldn't have done that, and they take it back. How could the leader forget such a significant policy point that they shouldn't provide proof of their secret and criminal acts? And what about the business with showing her the star map and asking Betty if she knew where Earth was on it? Was this supposed to be sarcasm? A rational person would make a gesture to show where Earth was on it and their home, or simply tell her that they had a policy against that. The story is not logical at all. This brings me to a larger disappointment. In looking through the notes, I saw that at one point he cites Brooksmith and Flock's encounters at Indian Head, but I find it very hard to believe he read it. His text does not engage with several important criticisms appearing in that book. Brooksmith's paper in particular demands attention to the analysis of what Bowman calls the thumbnail arithmetic researchers indulged in 2 months after the drive that led to the claim that there was missing time. The 2 lost hours emphasized in Fuller's subtitle. Brooks-Smith points out that their distance estimate was wrong, based on an as the crow flies number that ignores the route, which was extremely winding and even reverses direction at one point. Let's also reiterate that the hills themselves did not notice the discrepancy at the time when they reached home, something that modern depictions almost invariably falsely portray. Brooks-Smith's paper makes other observations that one can hardly believe Bowman would ignore, mentioning like the fact he, like others Bowman discusses, thought the interracial marriage was a matter for extended comment. Brooks-Smith also points out the genital warts that Barney reported are a common STD. I, Martin Kottmeyer, in this article, have a paper in the Indian Head book that spells out those illogical aspects of the dream I mentioned above. Though I don't object to Bowman referring to my earlier work as giving a bad science fiction interpretation to Betty's dreams, I had expanded my analysis to include showing how some of the odd elements of the examination, the nail clippings, hardly a usual medical procedure, skin scrapings, and the so-called pregnancy test seem to specifically echo matters seen in the investigation of radioactive fallout. This connects up to Betty's concern of radiation exposure, which lines up to how dreams typically reflect the ongoing anxieties a person is feeling. Anyway, there is more there, including his citations and references. Now, Martin Kottmeyer is a really unknown, undervalued UFO researcher, and he's most famous for an article which this essay probably delved into as well, which is about the connection to the Outer Limits episode called the Bolero Shield that talks about the wraparound eyes of the aliens, and he addresses some of that in this article as well. Well, back on our Flipboard, scrolling back through to the more recent articles, we've got Kevin Randall over at his blogspot.com. With the article Immaculate Constellation, Moondust, and Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, I have to comment on, I've not seen this photo, but it shows Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, quote, at a poorly attended Senate hearing. He is sitting with his back to the camera. And for the listening audience, at the end of a very long series of tables with at least 6 spaces between him and the other end of the table where Gillibrand is with her staff of, it looks like 5 other people. There's nobody else present. But basically the gist of this article by Kevin Randall, he says the retrieval program's protocols covered. So he's basically talking about Sean Kirkpatrick apparently has revealed that they have recently created a retrieval program for quote unquote alien technology. And Kevin is talking about how this relates to, again, history, like the things that everybody seems to have forgotten that he and others have worked on for so long and made publicly available. So in talking about that retrieval program, Kevin says, anyway, the retrieval program's protocols covered what he called, Sean Kirkpatrick, UAP recoveries that ranged from balloons to alien technology. This, it was claimed, is the first time that a government official acknowledged any UFO retrieval program, even if that retrieval program referred to terrestrial manufactured objects. He suggested the retrieval program began early in 2023. But there was a program called Moondust that began in 1957, according to documents recovered by Robert Todd, Cliff Stone, and me, Kevin Randall, that had as one of its missions, and I quote, to collect and analyze raw intelligence reports from the field of fallen space debris and objects of unknown origin, unquote. Unknown origin certainly could refer to craft from off-world. I found this information in an official U.S. Air Force message number 54322 and dated December 23rd, 1957. Although it doesn't mention moon dust specifically, it is clear from the document that it is describing moon dust and the moon dust mission involving UFO information. Kirkpatrick said, quote, "Arrow is congressionally directed to come up with not just standard reporting procedures, but also mitigation and response procedures in the event of a shoot down or a collection of any sort of UAP," unquote. But as earlier documentation proves, that sort of mandate had already been put into place, and despite Air Force original denials that no program known as moon dust existed, the documentation proved otherwise. And for those who claim that its mission was directed at recovering what was then Soviet debris, the mention of unknown origin suggests otherwise. You can read more about moon dust in my book, Project Moondust, and these other links to his blog post. And there's more to this article over at kevinrandall.blogspot.com. Okay, jumping back to flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives. There's a review of Jeff Kripal's new book, How to Think Impossibly, and that review is over at EurasiaReview.com. Meanwhile, there is this article by Lauren Coleman over at CryptoZooNews.com. Enjoy an illustrated history of urban legends, which, oh yes, here, I love this cover. This is by author Adam Alsuch Boardman with a very, 80s feel to it, with the pink and yellow and black color combination for this publication, An Illustrated History of Urban Legends. Oh, I guess this, there's some of the interior artwork. Very nice, very cute. Might actually be a good children's book. A young adult, not young adult, yeah, children's book. Anyway, quite cute. Oh, look, there's even a ostension is a message sent through the miming of actions, such as pointing to mean that way. Folklorists use the term to describe how people change their behavior because of urban legends, from avoiding a house because it is said to be haunted to the extremes of mass hysteria. And the images of a Scooby-Doo character pulling the Bigfoot mask off of a man. Oh yeah, and here's that Eurasia Review page for How to Think Impossibly Towards a Scientific Ufology op-ed by Eric Wahlberg on Jeffrey Kripal's book. All right, we're in the home stretch here, except what next? Okay. Demons, I say. Over at Skeptic Jason Colavito's blog, Tucker Carlson claims a demon attacked him in his sleep. Now, Colavito is a really hardcore skeptic debunker who I often totally disagree with his vitriol, but usually has a point to make, even if I don't like the way he delivers the point. And when I was made aware of this latest claim by Tucker Carlson, my response was something to the effect of, "This does not bode well." And what I meant by that is basically all I've seen is a brief interview with Tucker Carlson, I assume out in the woods outside his home, talking to somebody and describing this experience that I guess happened before he left, before he was excommunicated from Fox News. Anyway, it amounts to basically him waking up in the night in his bed, I believe with his wife and 3 or 4 dogs, and with I think a pain in his side. And when he gets up, he discovers that there are claw marks under his arm on the side of his body, where he says he couldn't have done it himself. The dogs couldn't have done it. And he's just convinced that it was a demon. And I don't know what more there is to this story, other than he doesn't, at least in the video I saw, talk about like other paranormal activity or poltergeist activity or haunting phenomena. It just seems like it really, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it reeks of attention seeking to satisfy the narrative of him being a good Christian afflicted by evil. And while that's a deeper discussion about the nature of good, evil, and demons and paranormal attacks and that sort of thing, it just seems a bit opportunistic to me. But, you know, maybe there's a lot more to the story that has yet to be told. I don't know how many of our viewers care, but it's a very interesting, I think it's a pretty brief video that folks might be interested in checking out. Maybe not. So back on our Flipboard, we're getting there. Oh yes, so there's some interesting articles over at UFO Archives-blogspot-com. That's not. Oh, it's the Google Translate. You'll have to translate this. It's I guess in Norwegian or whatever language they speak there. Apparently, there's been some controversy in a new documentary that talks about the history of UFO Sweden and the Archives for UFO Research, Archives for the Unexplained, AFU, a great archive and repository. And the author is trying to set the record straight. Haven't had the chance to read it. Don't really know what's going on with that controversy. Meanwhile, over at JSTOR Daily, there's this article, Ghost in the Machine, about gremlins, you know, the folkloric critters that cause mayhem. We've had a bit of that tonight on the back end, not during the show, but our streaming platform has all kinds of weird glitches happening, and it seems like there's been a lot of those lately. I have to go check that out over at JSTOR. And yeah, okay. Lastly, let's see if I can. This is another long one. I have not finished reading this over at pubpub.org, pub.org, Trends in UFO-related archival collections. Now, this looks to be a very important and substantial and much-needed analysis of UFO archival resources. And it's by D.M. Luftig and E.S. Kukier. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing their names correctly, but it's, as I say, over at pubpub.org. That's alki.pub.org. It's actually 3 months old. I'm only just now hearing about it, and I just started reading it this afternoon. And I immediately became very miffed at just some of the introductory materials. It just seemed kind of strange to me, but I think what they're trying to do is very important, and that is do a survey of all the archival collections that deal with UFO related materials and try to give an overview and a timeline and a resource ultimately for folks that are interested in researching these things, without, you know, providing, I don't think they try to give an analysis of like, oh, this percentage of collections suggest cryptoterrestrials or interdimensional or whatever, or hypotheses like that. But it says in the second paragraph, this study provides a history of UFO-related research and archival collections through an examination of trends gleaned via an inventory of publicly accessible physical collections. And this is where their terminology is very specific and important to define what they're doing. The study found that within North America, there are 62 unique non-federal collections spread across universities, museums, public libraries, and historical societies. 22 of these collections exclusively contain UFO research content. Collections were created by those who thought UFOs were misidentified objects, the original federal conclusion, and those who believed that there was more to the phenomenon. UFO archival collections started to catch on in the 1970s and are amongst the most popular at their institutions today. Which just reminds me about early days of the internet, when what were the most searched for things on the internet? Well, sex and UFOs. So what got my ire up? Let's see. Oh, gosh. Well, of course, they reference the new era we're in, circa late 2017, the New York Times article. But what was it that got me? Well, first of all, I'm not sure even where this is, but it's weird. Okay, well, let me just try to explain this. So they basically describe the government's perspective, as they said, misidentifications. In other words, there's nothing to it. They call them. I've got to find this. Yeah, here. No, there we go. Yes, here we go. People who study and or describe UFO-related phenomena attribute their causes in different ways. Duh. Although potentially reductionist for the sake of providing a narrative, this project has divided these UFO researchers into two camps. The first is those who agree with traditional federal conclusions. For example, UFOs are misidentified objects. This study refers to this camp as quote-unquote supporters. Secondly, there are those who are skeptical of federal conclusions and think there's more to the phenomenon than the initial government findings. This study refers to this group as quote-unquote skeptics, as they were skeptical of the government's early conclusion. Other accounts express views which are either more complicated or defy classification. This analysis remains agnostic to any hypotheses of the true basis of UFO phenomena. It just gets me because, of course, the average person interested in UFOs does not consider the government supporters, nor do they consider the people who disbelieve the government to be skeptics. I mean, certainly some believers think of themselves as skeptical, myself included, but it just seems overly convoluted and potentially confusing to people to call the government supporters, quote unquote, and the rest of us skeptics. I mean, okay, perhaps, I don't know, maybe I should look at it this way. As we often discuss, you look into UFOs and you immediately run into conspiracy and covert ops, cover-ups, the idea that the government is covering up the truth. That they're claiming one thing, that there's nothing there, no threat, nothing worth investigating, no there, and the rest of us are skeptics, are conspiracy theorists, pointing at them, going, "You're lying." So okay, maybe we are skeptics. Anyway, I'm probably being too silly. But there's a lot of other things. And one of the things I like about this page, apparently you can mouse over the footnote numbers and get the citation information for what they're referencing. That is very interesting. And there's already things that I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem true. There's some things that I immediately was like guffawing at, like they're so wrong about this on a couple of things. I don't recall the details yet. I was not taking notes. I was trying to read this as fast as I could this afternoon, and I did not get very far. But as I say, ultimately, I think this is a very important work. We'll see if I agree with that by the time I get to the end of it. We'll see. Let's see. Was there anything else before I end this? No, there's a lot of really good information here. In fact, I'm going to have to use this to help update our own Anomaly Archives directory of other archives. I seriously doubt we certainly were not contacted about this, and given that our materials have largely been in storage since February 2021, it's not easily accessible except by reservation, and even then we're working towards getting that to be more public. But we were up until the pandemic, up until 2020, we were available to research, and we do create finding aids. We've got one significant finding aid in the Texas Library and Archives Taro, Taro database. But that's exclusively for the Girard collection and may not actually meet the parameters that they've set forth as for what they are going for in this study. This is a very interesting graph. Figure 1, number of WorldCat items related to UFOs by publication year. You can see it spiked in the years 1996 to 2000 and has just been growing and growing, though it's kind of tapered off, I guess, in the last 10 years or so, or 20. But that's still, it's growing and growing is the good news. Anyway, that's going to be it. Of course, like we said, folks might, if you're in the Central Texas or Austin area, please come on down to the Nature's Treasures Event Center up in North Austin. You can find information about that on our website, anomalyarchives.org. That's going to be from noon to 5 p.m. They're going to be, it's a free event. There's vendors. There's going to be lectures and seance, and our host Saul Ravencraft's gonna do an interview with me and others. Very fun, interesting stuff, and hopefully we'll see you there. All right, well, that's gonna do it for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. You know the drill. Like, subscribe. Really could use your help spreading the word. Consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives. You can also just sign up there for free and get updates and notices about all kinds of things. And of course, if you subscribe at the Anomaly Academy Cadet tier or higher, you get access to our live online monthly lecture presentations and that growing back catalog of material. Oh yes, and so our next presentation is Saturday, November 16th. Joe Green presents a theoretical approach to conspiratorial thinking. Joe's a great talk speaker and presenter. And hey, we've got all the social media accounts. We just finally started messing around with our TikTok account. Yes, we have a TikTok account, which is, where is that? It's tiktok.com/Anomaly Archives Austin, and yeah, tiktok.com / Anomaly Archives Austin. And we have posted our first video made by our good friends Victor and Inita, and there's going to be more to come. And just here is that first video. It's just under a minute, so hold on there.
Imagine holding centuries of history in your hands. This is Cartographia by Vincent Verga, a time machine in a book. It contains over 200 rare maps, including what Verga calls America's birth certificate, the Waldseemüller map, which is the first map to include the name America. Vincent Verga, whose visual storytelling style was developed over a lifetime working as a photo editor, spent 10 years collaborating with the Library of Congress, examining and selecting maps, believing that each one goes beyond the mere depiction of geography and tells stories of power, mystery, and adventure, of conflict, discovery, and exploration. Cartographia is part of the Robert Charles Girard collection at the Anomaly Archives in Austin, Texas.
Thank you, Victor and Inita. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Good night, everybody. Take care. Be well. And we wish you all happiness and peace.